Perception involves using previous knowledge to gather and interpret stimuli registered by the senses. Vision is influenced by light hitting the retina. Light and photons are external distal stimuli. The colors in this image produce distal stimuli. Once a stimulus hits your retina, it becomes transcoded into a proximal internal stimulus. The movement you may see in this image results from proximal stimuli. Although there is no external distal movement, your perception interprets movement due to proximal signals. Even your thoughts can serve as proximal stimuli. This image, for example, may look like an eye. Because we are discussing vision, the concept of an eye is primed in your mind and can influence your interpretation of this sink drain as an eye. The study of vision has a long history, dating as far back as the study of anatomy does. This is due in part to the accessibility of the eyes relative to other parts of the brain. Today we know more about the eye than other perceptual systems. We also rely more on the eyes than other perceptual systems in interpreting our environment. If you focus on the middle of the screen throughout this slide, you may notice that the eyes can sometimes play tricks on us. Because you only have one visual processing system, you cannot simultaneously interpret contrasting inputs. You have two eyes as a sort of backup system, but they both feed into the same visual cortex, which does its best to try to combine the inputs into a meaningful message. This can cause errors, such as the one demonstrated in this exercise. Did the faces look like monsters in your peripheral vision? Now I'm going to play that clip again. This time, you can look individually at the celebrity photos. It's the same clip now. The reason the pictures look distorted when you focus on the cross is that the images fall into the periphery of your vision, so you can't focus on them. If your retina was built differently, you would be able to focus on your periphery. However, the majority of your retina is comprised of rods, which are good at detecting light, but bad at detecting details. But you don't have to take my word for it. Let's look at a few descriptions from around the internet.
And I want to point out that we have this layer of tissue here that we call the retina. And in the retina we have the rods and the cones. And we said that the rods are for black and white vision and just for detecting light, and the cones allow us to see detail. It allows us to see color. There's another area, a specific region of the retina that we call the fovea, and this is a very important region because we have a large amount of cones, so much so that we can have up to as many as 150,000 cones per square millimeter. So as you can see, that's a high density of cones, and we said that when light comes in, what the lens does is the lens actually focuses that light onto the retina. Specifically, if you're focusing on an object, it focuses the light onto the fovea, and that allows you to see a lot of detail. Now, if I am looking directly at an object, and let's say this is my object here, and you have these photons of light coming off of that object, and that's being focused onto the fovea, I can see the details of that object.
The retina is comprised of rods and cones. The fovea is the part of the retina with a concentration of cones. The focal point of vision hits the fovea, the peripheral vision hits other parts of the retina. Because the cones are better at recognizing color and detail, this means that the color and detail of objects perceived in the fovea should be easier to detect than the color and detail of objects in the periphery. Let's look at what happens when you see an image. First, of course, you will see it with your eye, and then your eye will transcode the messages into neural signals, at which point they become proximal. The eye will transmit the coded images to the visual system, which is located in the occipital region at the back of the head and can be further subdivided as shown here. The visual information travels from the eyes to the occipital cortex, crossing over at the optic chiasm, which is located towards the middle of the brain. The left visual field from each eye travels to the right side of the brain. The right visual field from each eye travels to the left side of the brain, and the crossover occurs at the chiasm, as is seen here. Let's back up and watch light enter the eye. Light enters through the cornea, then the pupil, which is a hole in the iris, then through the lens. The light is then projected onto the back of the eye, much like a projector projects film onto a screen. The projected light is on the retina. When the light hits the retina, it interacts with the photoreceptors. There are a number of other cells on the retina, but we're not going to worry about them at this point. The photoreceptors can be either rods or cones. If the light happens to fall on the fovea, it will be hitting a dense area covered by cones, which are specialized for either red, green, or blue light, depending on the cone's specified wavelength sensitivity. Somebody lacking one of those types of cones would be colorblind. There's also research indicating that the concentration of cones on the retina can be different for different individuals. The other type of photoreceptor is a rod, which is better at detecting night vision and contrasts. The rods make up most of your peripheral vision receptors. Let's review those basic steps again. First, light, a distal external stimulus, hits the retina. Then the signal is transcoded and sent through the optic nerve. Rudimentary message processing begins. Messages may start to prime memories. The occipital lobe and primary and secondary cortices process the electrochemical information. Object recognition occurs, and new memories may form. Most of the explanation has been pretty mechanical so far. In this class, we're more concerned generally with proximal and cognitive functions, even though much of the discussion about the visual system has been more biological and mechanical. Now, the reason that we're interested in the visual system in cognitive psychology is because of all the neat things your brain does when it's trying to interpret these messages. Unfortunately, it's important for us also to discuss the mechanical aspects, which personally I think are a little bit less interesting. Now, usually the visual system's attempts to make sense of the world are rather impressive. One example of the visual system making assumptions is demonstrated in the phenomenon of illusory contours, which are very much part of cognitive psychology. Now, take a look at this picture. How would you describe it? Many see a triangle in front of 3 circles and another triangle, although there are no triangles in this picture. This is an image of 3 Pac-Man-shaped objects and 3 V-shapes. The contours of the triangle are illusory, meaning they aren't actually there. There are no actual triangles in this picture. Here is another example of an image that induces the interpretation of illusory contours. In this one, there appears to be a ball with spikes, but it's actually just triangles arranged in a configuration that implies a ball in the middle. The lines of the ball are illusory contours. Now, this tendency of your brain to fill in the blanks is going to be a reoccurring theme throughout this course. It doesn't only happen with your visual system. It happens in your social life. It happens in your interpretation of what other people said. It happens in your recollection of memories. Basically, anytime you're thinking, you're using this, You're using this aspect of your brain. So with that, I leave you. And I'll see you next time.